Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting of the Virtual Tasting Society. Today, we're excited to welcome a distillery that we got a teaser of last year, a couple of years ago. We did a joint tasting with Filey Bay and McNean, I believe, that first introduction, right when you guys were just kind of taking off. Now we're excited to dive deep and learn all about the distillery and the brand. And joining us today is Joe Clark, the whiskey maker, whiskey guru. What is officially your title?
So the official title is Whiskey Director.
Okay. But
Um,
I appreciate your name is one that I can actually pronounce, so that's nice. I
yeah,
can't say the same about my name, but as always, thank you so much to Sam for making this possible for us. ImpEx Beverages has been a wonderful partner of the Virtual Tasting Society. We love all of your brands, and I'm sure this will be no exception. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate you taking the time. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who are here for the first time, maybe, no? If you are here for the first time, we're here to get nerdy. So please feel free to ask questions, toss them in the chat, share tasting notes. All we ask is that if you are not actively talking, keep yourself on mute so we don't have background noise and we're not talking over each other. So if I notice that you are unmuted and you are not talking, don't be offended if I quietly mute you. Nothing personal, just trying to making sure that we don't have sirens going by and dogs barking and so on and so forth. But please, we're here to get nerdy. We're not shy about that. Enjoy the tasting. Ask lots of questions. I'm sure Joe, you appreciate questions.
yeah, absolutely.
A more fun
Yeah,
experience for everyone. You all have met Jane Kilkenny. She's the co-host tonight. So if I need to step away, she's in charge. Be nice. She will turn this tasting around. She has threatened to many times. Other than that, please, Joe, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Filey Bay and Spirit of Yorkshire and everything what we're here for.
yeah, great, brilliant. Yeah, well, good evening, everybody, and yeah, pleasure to be back. And yeah, nice to see some familiar faces, which is really great. Some of you have already tasted our whiskey, and you've heard a bit about us over the last few years. Obviously, a lot of you know Sam and the good work that ImpEx do, which is brilliant. So yeah, my name is Joe Clark, and I'm whiskey director at Filey Bay Whiskey. So that means my role is kind of like could be compared, and I guess is the same as a blender role, master blender role. Um, Most distilleries will have somebody that's responsible for looking after what goes in a bottle, and that's absolutely my focus at the distillery. So my main job, watching the maturing stocks. So I spend a lot of time with our maturing whiskey and cask selection and wood management, that kind of thing. But alongside from that, I also work very closely with sales and also marketing as well. Our distillery is 10 years old this year, which in the grand scheme of things, you think of some distilleries that have had their bicentenaries that I'm sure you're all aware of. Distilleries like Lefroy and Ardbeg, to name a couple. But for us to hit 10 years this year is pretty awesome. And I'm very grateful, very privileged to say that I've been there for all 10 of them. So yeah, I've been with the distillery right since the very beginning, since we started. Our co-founders, David Thompson and Tom Meller, who's a third generation barley farmer. I'll talk more about those guys later. But yeah, I met Tom and David back in the spring of 2016, just before we started distilling. And yeah, joined them in November 2016. So yeah, I've been right in it for 10 years, and it's come a very long way. So yeah, if you've got any questions about how or why we do what we do, I'm pretty well placed to answer it. And certainly on a production level, day to day production, distilling, all of these kinds of things. There's very few areas of the business that I haven't been involved in. But please don't ask me about the US market, because that's one area that is absolutely David's thing, and working with Sam, because yeah, you guys have a quite a well, notwithstanding a massive country to sell whiskey in, but of course you've got quite a different layers of distribution and things like that. So I'm not so good on that stuff, yeah. But in terms of product and the distillery and its history and everything that we're doing, no problem.
So I see Sam posted your a link to your bio, and you've written 2 books. What
Yeah,
books are those? What are they about?
yeah, I kind of forget that's in there. So yeah, back in 2014, I published a book called The Ultimate Book of Whiskey, and it was a big project. You know, it was something like 42,000 words. There was a US version actually. It did something like 36,000 copies, which to this day still surprises me. There's still copies kicking around. But yeah, if you wanted to kind of jump online and have a look for it, it was called The Ultimate Book of Whiskey. It was published by Paragon Books. And there was something like 200 distilleries in there, or maybe 250 distilleries. It was a big piece of work. Did an update to it in 2018. And yeah, along in between that, there was actually a small book about gin, but we don't talk about that. Okay. And even a book on rum as well. So yeah, before I met Tom and David, I was kind of treading the line of a whiskey writer, published author. It was one of my strings to my bow. Haven't done a lot of writing recently. Do a bit obviously for the distillery when we're doing kind of posts on new releases and why we're doing things. So you can find a lot of my more recent writing on the distillery blog. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've talked about those books. So yeah, it's nice to kind of revisit them from time to time.
Awesome. We're really excited about this. Tell us about Yorkshire Distillery and Filey Bay. Why different names? Let's start with that, and then let's dive into the flagship and get some liquid on our lips. I know it's middle of the night for you. Are you in Scotland right now?
No, I'm not. I'm a little bit further south. So yeah, we're located kind of in the middle. You know, if you imagine a map of the British Isles, and Yorkshire is a county that sits almost directly in the middle of the British Isles. So if you can visualize Edinburgh and London, and then in the middle of the country, we've got a town called York. That's where I am right now. It's where I live. And then, which was the old capital of England, by the way. It was the Roman capital of England. It was the Viking capital of England. And then, if you go an hour from where I am to the coast, you're right where we make whiskey, which is a town called Filey. And your first question is a really good one. So why, the distillery name and the whiskey name. So when Tom and David set up the business, they want the distillery name Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery, which was a really, really strong name for the area and for the region, and certainly has a lot of punch for the county that we're in. Yorkshire's a big place, so it's big as far as we're concerned, but you're talking about 5.5 million people in Yorkshire, and it's the biggest county in the UK. And so the name was a really, really strong name in terms of a distillery that was purpose built and in a location where it gets a lot of visitors. We get nearly 40,000 visitors a year some years. So when we came to launching whiskey, of course, you have 3 years of laying down casks, and those first 3 years give you a lot of time, obviously focused on what this whiskey is going to be. And we all agreed, certainly in the kind of latter parts of 2018 all the way through to launching, that actually the name Spirit of Yorkshire, although it's a really strong name for us where we're from, actually when you take it outside of that, it doesn't have the same impact. And when we're in the distillery, if any of you guys visit, from the back of the distillery on a nice clear day, you can see the sea, and you can see one end of the bay, and the nature of that landscape and where we are and where we sit in it, we all quite quickly agreed that actually a really good name for our single malt whiskey is the name of exactly where we're from, which is Filey Bay. And the thing with the name Filey Bay is just it was shorter, it's easier to kind of take that name and put it around the world rather than the name of the county of where we were from. And that was partly our reasoning really for having the difference in the name. So if we're talking about things specific to the distillery, tourism for us, we'll talk more about the name, the distillery name. When we're out and about around the world and we're selling bottles, it's all about Filey Bay whiskey.
Cool, that makes sense. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. A short, easy to read name is very helpful. We were just
Yeah.
talking about people who don't order a certain whiskey at a bar because they don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of complicated long names out there on bottles, is there? There's plenty of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you want to make a start and get tasting?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Let's dive into the flagship.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, so Flagship, as the name would suggest, I've got the bottle here, is our far and away best-selling whiskey that we make, and it's been part of the range since 2020. So we did our first release at the end of 2019, and it was an absolute hit. We followed on with second release bottling, and then we started moving into finishes, and then Flagship joined the range in the back end of 2020, and since then it's been the really kind of core part of what we do. If you could wind back and ask Tom and David or myself, what is the whiskey that we set out to create as a distillery? Why have we made so many decisions that we've made around types of stills, types of ferment, and cut points, cask choices? It was all tailored and geared to make this kind of whiskey. So it's very light, soft, fruity. Flagship, we have available all year. It's available in all the markets that we sell whiskey. So you can buy a bottle of this now across many states in the US, of course here in the UK, but you can buy a bottle of this now in Stockholm, Berlin, Rome, Paris, Zurich. There's many countries now where you can buy a bottle of this, and it's best example of distillery character. 100% bourbon, natural color, non-chill filter, bottled at 46. And when you're nosing this and you're just starting to ease in, assuming that it's the first whiskey that you guys have tasted today, maybe not Sam, he is in his amazing whiskey room there. But first whiskey that you guys have tasted today, bear that in mind and just use this to kind of ease in. And I'm informed that a lot of you are good and pre-pour and are very well prepared. So what's quite good with Flagship is if you keep it as a reference dram as we go through the others, it can be really good to come back to it throughout the tasting, because not only do your senses adapt and get used to the strength of the whiskey, so you might find its profile a little bit different in half an hour after we've done a bit more tasting. But also in terms of seeing the baseline flavour character from us and seeing how it changes through the rest of the bottles is really interesting. So I'll try and recommend, if you can, just holding a little bit of Flagship left in your glass just to keep as like a reference point through the rest of the tasting. And the process is very different to the other whiskies that we're tasting tonight, because we're making Flagship continuously, and we've been releasing this whiskey now continuously for 5 years. And unlike the others, we're using like a fractional marrying system, which is built on the principles of a Solera system. And it means what we do is we never really stop making it, and we're always adding whiskey to this system. So that very first batch that I mentioned back in 2020, it was a batch of 24 first fill bourbon casks, cost 200 litres. each cask. And, rather than taking that whole batch of whiskey and bottling it all, we bottled some of it and then topped up the remaining whiskey with more casks. And we've been doing that continuously for 5 years. And what that means is that it's allowed us to create this whiskey over time. Its average age keeps creeping up. So, depending when you have tried Flagship from us, that whiskey can always have the same core flavor profile. But, the very latest versions of it are certainly integrating older whiskey than it was, 5 years ago. So I hope that makes sense, but it's a really, really important whiskey for us for this reason, because it's been such a long journey with it over the last 5 years. It'll be 6 years this autumn since we've been using this system. And yeah, it's something that we're all really, really, really proud of, certainly as a young distillery, to be able to kind of build that and kept it and maintaining it and sticking to our guns and not, kind of raiding the system too much. Early on we would take a approach of kind of bottling half, keeping half, topping that half up with older stock. But in the last 2 years, we've been able to bottle a little bit more kind of little and often with some new bottling equipment, which has allowed us to kind of use the system slightly differently and take less whiskey out and top it up more frequently, it's been really nice. Yeah. So yeah, the key thing with Flagship, which is different to all the other whiskies that we're tasting tonight, despite the Peated Finish and the STR Finish being quite large batches of whiskey, this is continuous and in theory should always be available. You should never be too far away from it. So we like to think of it as a bottle that you get the right company, open that bottle at the right time of the night, and it can go down very quickly. But that's fine, because you can always grab another.
Ooh, I've got a question for Joe. I know Yorkshire has a really long and really distinct tradition of brewing. So has any of that culture influenced how y'all operate in any way?
Yeah, absolutely it has. Perhaps more so than almost any other distillery. So our background is farming, and our next step on the road to whiskey production was making beer. So we've actually been making beer on our farm since 2003, and it's a really good point that you make with Yorkshire having a strong connection to beer. So I'll just expand on that a little bit. So Yorkshire and the East Coast particularly is one of the principal barley growing areas of the UK. So it is a massive source of barley, which is then being malted in lots of maltings around the county. And that malted barley, I've got a bag of it here as it happens, is being sent to lots of breweries and of course lots of distilleries as well to make beer and or whiskey. We've got breweries in Yorkshire that are kind of like distilleries in Scotland in terms of age. We've got some breweries that are over 100 years old, 150 years old, some that are even 200 years old. But the county has no history of distilling, and we were the first whiskey from Yorkshire. So yeah, just to backtrack a little bit, I mentioned that we have a farm, and this is one of the really kind of key differences to us and other distilleries. Obviously, you guys are tasting a lot of whiskies, you're familiar with lots of distilleries, so you'll probably be able to name a couple, I would have thought, other distilleries that have a farm, but it's certainly not the norm. And where we come from in terms of a reason for making whiskey really starts all the way back with farming. So Tom Mellor, third generation barley farmer, and his family bought our farm at the end of the Second World War, and it was late 90s, early 2000s, where if you were growing barley, it was really hard to get a really good price for it and make a good living out of it. So Tom and his wife Jill, very resourceful, very bright, very entrepreneurial, looked around the farm and the resources that were available, and two things really stood out. Of course, one is barley, right? And Tom would be talking to the maltsters, which is 8 miles from the farm, just near another town down the coast called Bridlington. And, he would be having a conversation with the then directors there. And, he was asking them questions along the lines of, so when you take the barley I've grown, where does it go? What do you do with it? And of course, outside of malting it, and they say to him, well, we're selling it to breweries and distilleries, Tom. And so, he takes this back, and it just sits in the back of his mind, and looks around with Jill, and then, of course, start to join the dots here and think, well, if we're growing barley and we've got a water supply on the farm, so we've never had mains water up there. It's always been a water source from a chalk aquifer under the Yorkshire Wolds. So we've got a water supply that's really, really good quality, and we've got really, really good quality barley. Let's make beer. And that's what happened. So, 2003, founded the Wold Top Brewery. And that is a brewery that excels in really good quality traditional English ales. So it's not like, you guys will be absolutely spoiled as we are here now with so many amazing kind of craft breweries making crazy IPAs and all sorts of like kind of crazy styles of beer. Wold Top has been like really consistent with a particular style, which is what we would refer to as like classic English ales. And it is very, very good at it. And of course, Sam's been over. He's had a pint or two on the farm over the years, and I'm sure would agree. So this is where we started. It's farming and then into beer production. But if you think about what Tom was hearing from the maltings, they weren't just selling that barley to breweries; they're selling it to distilleries. So, the next logical progression here was whiskey production. And so it was around 2012, first ideas of the distillery started to crop up. Tom's a very busy guy, at this point. And so he kind of leaned on a very good friend of his, David Thompson. And, Tom and David go back a long way at this point, it was over kind of 30 years of knowing each other. Live very close. David lives quite close to where the farm is, and actually used to buy barley from Tom a long time ago, and they'd crossed over in that sense. And they also, there's a quite nice story where actually Dave was trying to buy some barley off Tom. This is before they were pals, before they were friends, and there was negotiation on price, and they both played rugby and different teams despite living in the same area. And Tom had heard that David was actually quite a good player, and his team were short a guy for a couple of games. And so he said to David, look, if you come and play for our team for these couple of matches, then I'll sell you this barley at this price, the price that you want. And that was their first kind of negotiation. But also from that point, they just became really good pals. And then, they had young families at the same time. So their kids grew up together. And Tom's daughter, Jenny, and other daughter, Kate. So Kate's running the brewery with her husband, Alex. Jenny's heavily involved in what we do as our marketing director. So we're very, very closely with Jenny week in, week out, have done since, we started. And, that kind of meeting and timing, and David's really good business acumen. He's run some very, very successful businesses over his life, and Tom wanted to make the distillery, and he asked David, "Are you up for this? Do you want to make whiskey in Yorkshire?" And yeah, he kind of jumped at it, absolutely jumped at it, and they put so much into it early on. Spent a huge amount of time researching, time and time again, surprised and really mystified as why whiskey would never have been made in Yorkshire before, when you've got so much of the infrastructure to do it in terms of raw materials and the right kind of area, the right kind of place to do it. It's really surprising that we were the first, certainly the first legal whiskey anyway. So yeah, that's where the brewing kind of fits into it for us. And yeah, the famous Yorkshire beers that are out there. Maybe a few of you have had a Yorkshire beer every now and again. Yeah, if you're having a pint, you can think hopefully about that kind of backstory on us. And if you get the chance to drink some Wall Top, jump at it, because the beer is superb.
Are there any laws within England, right? Because that's where Yorkshire is, about English whiskey, which are different from Scottish whiskey?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, we've got a bit more wriggle room on certain areas. So we effectively follow the rules and the guidelines of whiskey production, really as stated by the EU definitions. So a lot of this is the same as Scotch whiskey. If you want to make and sell single malt whiskey and sell it in the UK or Europe and pretty much everywhere else around the world, then you've got to tick these boxes. And some of them won't surprise you, okay? So like single malt whiskey, okay, it has to be made with 100% malted barley. It has to be matured for a minimum of 3 years. But we have a little bit more flexibility than in Scotland, certainly on distilling. So they have to use just pot stills to make malt whiskey. We've got a bit more flexibility. I'll grab a carton. If any of you ever pick up a bottle of what we're making, it's got a really nice process diagram across the carton. Hopefully you guys can see that. And on this side here, we've got the stills, and we've got a kind of hybrid pot and column setup, which allows us to make 2 spirit styles. And yeah, this is one example of where we've got a bit more flexibility. We technically don't have to use oak. We could use other wood, but we choose to use oak, and we really advocate it's absolutely the best choice for the best results. We feel it's a bit crazy to try and use other stuff. So yeah, we've got a set of rules, and we're working pretty hard now as a collective in the English whiskey industry to tighten those rules up now and really help to maintain quality in our kind of fledgling whiskey industry, because we're not alone as English whiskey makers. There's upwards nearly of 60 coming up, but in terms of the distilleries that have a decent amount of whiskey and have been doing it a while, we've all come together to try and protect what we've made, protect our investment, and get those rules tightened up so that we can, really maintain the quality and build on the good work that we've done, and help any other newer or smaller producers coming through. So if you want to dig in a little bit more on that, Kate, because it's a really good question, and you've got the time, then check out the English Whiskey Guild. And on there, you'll see a breakdown of what we're trying to achieve through this, which is, really protecting quality so that, we've been making whiskey for 10 years. The oldest English whiskey distillery right now 18 years old. So it's kind of important we get this right. And if we want people to grab a bottle of English whiskey in 100 years or in 50 years and have that confidence that it's made right and that it's really good quality, what we're doing now with the Guild is really important. So yeah, check it out, have a look. We're not far off getting, hopefully, our GI, which is a really important thing. And yeah, that'll be a big step for the Guild. That'll be the kind of culmination of nearly 3 years' work on that project. So how are we getting on with Flagship, guys?
I really like the florality of it. It's almost like a sweet wood rough. That sort of vanilla note that comes from a wood, like if you've ever had Bay wine.
Yeah, there's definitely classic bourbon maturation. Yeah, of course, vanilla. Tasting notes for this. We'd like to keep our tasting notes pretty clean on bottles, not overly complicated. I'll never forget being at Bricklady once. I think I bought a bottle of a series that they did called the First Growth series, all wine casks and stuff. But I can remember pulling out a leaflet out of the tin and unfolding it like an accordion, and it was an entire tasting note down the whole thing. It was about 1,500 words of tasting note. We try not to overcomplicate it, but the key flavor profile that we put on the back label for this whiskey is light, soft, fruity, creamy, honey, vanilla, citrus, caramel. Kind of key flavor profile there. But what we find with a lot of people, and I think you guys will get this because you're obviously into whiskey, you're tasting it a lot, is that kind of distillate driven characteristics in here. So you should be getting some very kind of light green fruits, and a lot of this is to do with the distillate profile. And when we're making whiskey, really key focus for us is making something that's really balanced. And this is how we kind of regard distillate driven flavors. So these are flavors that we're creating through all the choices in fermentation and distillation and cut points, and all of these kind of key decisions that create the profile of the new make. And then our wood-driven flavors over here, and making sure that they're nice and in balance. And Flagship, hopefully you're getting some of that lovely green fruit. You might get like candied fruit. You might get a bit of like kind of pear drop, this kind of, or we call pear drops here, they're like an old sweet. Don't know if you've got anything similar in the US, but yeah, it's like a pear candy. And these kind of flavors are very much the distillate side, and then those lovely kind of wood driven flavors, the vanilla and the caramel coming through from the cask, and the two nicely meeting so that you get a nice rounded balanced dram. But yeah, we didn't want to create a core whiskey that was too heavy on the wood. It's not really our style. We're always we do like to release some big sherry bombs and some big hitters. We're going to try one later, of course. You see the colour of that. The wood is having a bit of a more say in this whiskey later. But yeah, certainly for Flagship, it's that lighter style, definitely. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about your production choices of, like, are you using an M strain yeast? How long is the fermentation? Just some of those other things, because that's what makes it taste the way it does.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so these decisions are really key. Obviously, with a brewing background, you can expect we're obviously really keen on yeasts, and we've had that kind of really strong starting point. I think where a lot of distilleries, when they set up and they can make mistakes, is certainly in mashing. You're learning to be a brewer as well as a distiller all at once, whereas we were able to kind of lean on all the mistakes that Tom made back in 2003 and 2004 to set off on a really strong foot with it. I've not talked about Jim Swan yet. He was really key early on for us in terms of these early decisions. Ferment is something that we're doing over 75, 95 hour fermentation time, which sounds kind of a bit unusual, but it'll make a bit more sense as I explain this. But yeah, in terms of yeasts, we're using two types of yeast. They are distillers yeasts. We get really good results with them. Obviously, they're more robust than brewers yeasts, and they can really keep performing at higher temperatures, which is why a lot of distilleries like it. I think that the fact that they are more robust does make it a good choice for a lot of producers. So you got your distillers yeast working away as like your powerhouse. We kind of describe them as like the Marines of yeast, versus your kind of brewers yeasts, which are a bit more chilled out, and they're a little bit slower to get working. And then we have another yeast variety which we're using on top of that, which will remain a secret, depending on how much I drink over the course of the next 2 hours. And yeah, that's helping to bring in more fruit into the flavor profile in the ferment. So we're using the two types. We pitch them at different points. So as we're taking the wort off the mash, we're cooling that down so that you can pitch the yeast at the right temperature that it likes. And obviously we've got very good at this over the years. So we pitched yeast 1, which is it's fine, a little bit warmer. Yeast 2, which likes things a bit cooler. So yeast 2 gets pitched later. And then that's it. They're away. They're going to do their thing. And you've got that first 75 hours of fermentation time. One of these kind of key differences, just skipping back to rules and regulations of production. So we're able to, split our production over the two sites that we have, which is the brewery on the farm, and then about 3 miles down the road we have the distillery, and so we share a mash tun with the brewery. So we're doing the step of milling, mashing, and fermentation on the farm, and then we're moving that that wash down to the distillery, to the still house. And so after 75 hours, so if we start fermenting on a Monday, we're going to be bringing that delivery down to the distillery on a Thursday. So that's kind of step 1. And as you do that, we put all of that lovely fruity wash into a 10,000 litre tanker, which we pull with a tractor. And as actually what we've realised doing this is that it creates a whole kind of recirculation of all the yeast, and we get a bit more activation. And it's a process which is actually, it's a wine thing. It's kind of like a secondary process for us. It wasn't something that was really, it wasn't the reason why we did it like this, but it's a really nice effect that we get. So you get a kind of whole recirculation of that wash as we move it into this tanker to move it down to the still house. And as soon as we get it to the still house, we're going to fill the wash still. Wash still's 5,000 litres. So 5,000 litres of that's going straight into that still, and then we're going to start firing that up and distilling. Whereas the other half is going to sit for another day, and then we're going to distill that half the next day. And that's the 75, 95 hour split, which I think is pretty unique, because you don't find many distilleries that would have that set up, and therefore would split that cycle. You tend to have if your plan was 75 hours and you'd have your fermenters, you'd have everything going at 75, and we would be bringing that wash down, 2 deliveries. We'd be bringing it down from the farm twice, and making sure that it just had the 75. But actually the 75, 95 hour split has worked well for us over the years. Yeah.
That's super unique. I like that. Is that something you do with all of your whiskeys, or?
Yeah, that's every drop of spirit we've ever made. Yeah, in 10 years is that process. Yeah.
Well, that's just fascinating. But it's great that it worked out well. I'm
isn't it?
super curious about the STR based on all this other stuff. So
yeah, cool. Do you guys want to move on? Are you ready for whiskey 2?
sure.
Yeah. Forgive me if I talk a bit long. Jane, if you need to nudge me along a bit, just give me a poke. Just say, Joe,
I'll absolutely poke you. We're good. I just see thirsty faces. I'm like, hey, how about that STR?
Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah.
Oh, no worries. I just think the process is fascinating because you do it so differently. So that's just really cool. Anna always asks the great questions. So
yeah, good. So yeah, whiskey 2 tonight, which is our STR cask finish. Matured in bourbon and STR X red wine casks. And you guys are very lucky over there because you get to drink this whiskey at a unique strength, which is a whole 2% stronger than anywhere else that you can find it in the world. And you can thank Sam for that in his negotiations. And yeah, it's a kind of release for us that is very, very, very popular. Very popular. And as you get into tasting this, you'll see how we start to layer more flavour into that baseline character. So this is primary maturation in bourbon and then moving on into the STR red wine casks. I'm sure you guys have tasted some whiskey from STRs, but you know, for the benefit of those of you who might not know, this is a cask type which is really kind of optimized for whiskey production and was largely pioneered by Dr. Jim Swan. It's a name that I mentioned earlier. And so Jim, back in the 70s, was a chemist. Some of the work he did in the whiskey industry is absolutely incredible. Again, for you guys that like a bit of research and you like to kind of get another layer of detail, do a bit of reading on Jim Swan, and you'll find that there's areas of the industry that you know, with the work that he did, certainly throughout his career, have had a massive effect on the industry. Really, really amazing guy. Absolute privilege to work with and learn from. And one area that he was particularly good on was maturation and casks and wood. And he was, yeah, pioneering this cask type. And if you find any distilleries that Jim worked with, there's a very good chance that they'll have filled some of these STR casks and they'll have some in the warehouse. You know, some have filled a lot more. We have filled quite a bit. You know, most of what we use them for is for this release, which is, you know, using them for anything for really a year to 2 years, 3 years for the kind of finishing period. But I'll tell you a bit about how they're made. So, red wine production in Rioja, Spain. They're using new wood, and you fill in these casks for roughly 5 years for the kind of more premium Rioja red wines, kind of like reservas, grand reservas. And the trouble with those casks, if you take that wine out and we put our whiskey in it straight away, the trouble you've got is that the wine is really powerful. So, you know, we were talking a bit earlier about the balance of flavour, distillate flavours and wood flavours here. I don't know if you guys can see my hands, but, you know, if we took those red wine casks at that point and filled them with our whiskey, the wood-driven flavours would be creeping up quite high. And the distillate flavour and the distillery character can be playing second place. So what the STR process does is getting the balance really nice. So first step is shaving of the inside of the cask. So the cask is emptied of wine. They go back to the cooperage that we work with called Miguel Martin. Miguel, amazing, like a really incredible operation, providing casks for some very, 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 very well-known, very good distilleries for a very long time, and had a great relationship with Jim. And, you know, yeah, Miguel is taking these casks in. His guys will then take the ends off the cask and set about shaving away a few millimeters of the wine-soaked oak is going to be shaved away from the inside of the cask. At the end of this, you take all the shavings that are on the floor, you bring them together, put them in a steel basket, light them on fire, roll the cask over the top of that, and you now toast the newly exposed oak. You then rechar the cask, you get the ends back on, you make the cask nice and tight again. A little bit of sherry at this point so that the cask doesn't dry out between Jerez in Spain and our distillery in Yorkshire. And, you know, we're rolling those casks through, you know, the shutter at the distillery, and we're filling them with whiskey and, of course, new make as well, but predominantly whiskey. And that process, yeah, is creating a cask where you're getting lovely red wine character, you're getting soft red fruits, you're getting like red fruit, and you're getting the best of that. You're getting the really lovely wine character, but it's not crushing your distillery character at the same time, and it's not overwhelming it. So hopefully when you're tasting this, as we've moved on from Flagship, is you're getting a bit more richness, and you're finding that lovely red fruit, and at 48% as well, just a really nice body, a really nice mouthfeel. I'm sure you guys are familiar with kind of slightly higher ABV, and as you'll know, is that, you know, it gives you that extra grip and just that more longevity in the finish as well. So hopefully you're enjoying it as you're sipping away on it. It's a whiskey that's done very well for us in terms of competitions as well. Yeah, numerous medals in lots of different competitions over the years. And yeah, you know, we've kept releasing it. Batch sizes, roughly 6,000 bottles per batch. How are you guys getting on?
So good. I'm just like, I keep getting stuck smelling everything instead of drinking it. I did the same thing when I was pouring everything, because I'm just like, oh my God, this smells so good. I can't drink it right now because it's not the tasting. Damn it. So, but yeah, I really find this fascinating. It was one that I remembered from the tasting before, I think, and it was stuck in the back of my head that it tasted like melted ice cream.
Yeah, I like that.
And it still tastes like melted ice cream. So I'm like, oh, good, my brain worked. Hooray.
We have a flavour of ice cream here in the UK called raspberry ripple ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those kind of tasting notes that we've heard over the years from different people around the UK. Certainly, yeah, it's that kind of like that lovely red fruit. I think as well, like, you know, as the weather gets better, what's the weather like over there for you guys right now?
It was almost 80 today. Warm and sunny.
Let's be clear, not everyone's in LA.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair, for those of the group that are not in LA, it's been really nice here for the last 4 or 5 days. It was 85 yesterday.
Yeah, it sounds lovely.
Yeah, my sister's throwing stuff at me through the video screen because it was 14 and snowy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, okay.
I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I live in LA for a reason. So
yeah, nice. It's a good choice, Jane. You know, everybody at the distillery and at the brewery, because where the brewery is, you know, it's very windy. And yeah, you know, it is cold up there right now, and it is miserable, and it is wet and windy. And I've been in the warehouse a lot this last week, and I think the warehouse temperature peaked at 6 degrees when I was in there yesterday. Yeah, so it's been quite enduring. We know it's bad when the wind will blow the doors open of the distillery shop, you know, and just kind of blast in a load of rain and sleet. Yeah, so it's been pretty cold and grim here, but you know, it'll soon be spring, and we'll be seeing seeing the kind of the hedgerows and the early kind of spring flowers coming to life on the coast, and that's when this kind of whiskey, I think, is a bit better suited to kind of warmer weather and a brighter climate. It's kind of that freshness and that lightness, and the flavor profile is a flavor that we typically associate more with summer when we look at ripe red fruits. Of course, these are things that come through at the end of summer. So it's that kind of profile for us, and we like to kind of lean into this and tend to drink a bit more of it when the weather's a bit warmer. Whereas opposed to right now in February, where we're reaching for anything that's cask strength and heavily sherried, So you guys got any questions on the STR casks?
So you said the Flagship is 100% ex-bourbon cask, and then the STR is 100% STR?
No, so it's matured in bourbon and then moved on into the STR.
Okay.
So yeah, we've been doing every week consistently, filling 13 to 14 bourbon casks every week. So that's like 4 days distilling for us. Kind of wind it back to 4 tons of barley, which is what we're using for a week's production. And yeah, we've been really consistent with that for years now. And so the majority of whiskey in our warehouse is first fill bourbon. And so a lot of the whiskies that we've been releasing over the last few years have had a primary maturation in bourbon. You're talking 3, 4, upwards maybe 5 years in bourbon, depending on the release, and then moving on into the next cask type. And it allows you to kind of layer in that baseline character, that we've been talking about with Flagship, and the distillery character gets layered into that whiskey. The whiskey has that time to soften and have that initial maturation, and then using the second cask type to layer flavor in, but still achieve really nice balance and really nice integration, so that you've got something that is tasting really good, but also technically is really kind of in tune and not kind of leaning off in too many different directions. STRs, we've had good results using them full term, and we have got some that are laid down full term, and some whiskies where they're really, really, really tasty. But yeah, we like them as a finishing cask, because you're getting a really lovely hit of flavour, but it's controlled. So yeah, some of the full term stuff can be a bit more challenging, in terms of that balance that we've been talking about before.
Cool. Sure, we move on to the peated finish?
I'm ready if you guys are ready.
I think we're ready.
Yes, because I'm super curious about this one.
Yeah, good. So this wasn't on the last tasting, was it?
I don't think it was.
No.
So yeah, this is a really interesting whiskey, and is the only whiskey we release with any peat about it at all for now. And yeah, we like it. We really like it, and it's like soft smoke, sweet smoke. David loves peated whiskey. I imagine you've probably worked that out, Sam, if you've hung out with him for a bit. Which does make you wonder why the plan was not peated. But making a peated whiskey from scratch in Yorkshire, and not using Scottish peat is not an easy thing to do. And yeah, we are very fortunate to have some very, very good friends in the industry. Some really good distilleries that we know, that do make peated whiskey. So as the name suggests with this, it's our peated finish. Like the STR that you guys have, you've got this at a higher strength as well. You've got that 48%. Everywhere else in the world, this is 46. So you've got another special, whiskey that's very unique to the US market. And yeah, we're looking at a process here where we're acquiring some casks from a distillery on Islay and taking those casks and then filling them with our mature whiskey, and then that whiskey is doing a period of maturation in those peated casks, those ex-Islay casks, and then that's what you're tasting now. So this is how we're getting the smoke into this. We're not using barley that has been, dried or partially dried with peat smoke. It is entirely coming from the wood and from the previous incumbent of that cask, which isn't typical. There's a few examples of it over the years in malt whiskey that stand out to me, but it's certainly not a kind of common practice. And I think I think for distilleries that want to make something really peated, it wouldn't be the right approach, because you're looking for much heavier profile and much more smoke. Whereas for us, it actually works really, really well. We never want, we're not going to make Lafroig, or Lagavulin, with a light style. So peated casks have worked really well because they've, again, going back to it, I keep talking about it, but in terms of balance, they've allowed for a lot of control in maturation to get a really lovely sweet spot where you're getting that little touch of smoke. And over time, if you guys just keep sipping away on this, the smoke starts to build as you breathe in and out. The kind of retronasal kind of as the aroma profile moves from the back of your palate up to your olfactory epithelium, you will find the smoke building as you breathe in and out. So it's something we're really fond of. And yeah, there's going to be a bit more of this down the line, and there may even be a time in the future where we can make some peated spirit once we've got a peated source nailed down. There's a lot of peat in Yorkshire, a lot of peat across the north of England, of course, as well as a lot of the northern hemisphere around the world. And we would love to be able to create a project where we're taking some of that, but doing it in a way that really chimes with our values. We've got a big focus on sustainable whiskey production for us. Very, very fortunate because we've got the farm and we've been growing barley regeneratively. So we farm regeneratively, which if you're not familiar with that term, it's something that you probably will become familiar with over the next few years, because it is a really, really key part of managing some of the biggest challenges of our time. And the basic principles here of regenerative farming, certainly for barley and kind of arable crops, is you don't turn the soil over. You don't plow the land and turn the soil over. And what we're doing on our farm is a kind of no-till or low-till. So trouble you've got, when you turn soil over, and obviously a whole mix of people from different places on this tasting and different ages as well. But certainly when I was back in school, back in primary school, when you were learning about farming, you see ploughing, right? And ploughing is just the norm, and it's how it's done. But the trouble is with ploughing all the time is you turn the soil over, you break the root structure in the soil, and you release a load of CO2 when you do it. And of course, every time you're ploughing, there's other things to consider as well. You're dragging machinery across the land. It's a lot more intensive. When you break the root structure, it's bad for the soil. It's bad for the long-term health of the soil. Anything that lives in it as well, it doesn't like it. So you kind of couldn't, if you wanted to set out to really make it hard for everything that lives in it, that's what you do. And so regen farming is basically, number one principle is you don't disturb the soil. Yeah, and if you think about any natural system, soil doesn't get turned over. And cover cropping is the next kind of really important part of this. So you never leave the soil kind of naked. You've always got something growing in it and on it. And these kind of key principles allow you over time to increase the root structure in the soil, which is really good, because that means when it rains, more water is locked in the land, doesn't run away into rivers and cause massive flooding events. It's really good for carbon capture over time, because every time that plants grow, they will capture carbon and lock it in the soil. And we've got a whole project going where we're going to eventually, when we have the time, a small team, independent distillery, I will add at this point, when we've got the time and the kind of bandwidth, we're going to unpick this data, and we won't be far off being, hopefully, a kind of net zero production. And the benefits of this are obvious, right? But when you're in it, and I'm driving on and off that farm all the time, and over the time, 10 years of farming this way, now you see the life that comes off the back of these processes is incredible. The wildlife, it's so much better for biodiversity. Everything is happier. But you will have a period of lost yield as a result of farming this way. So it doesn't work for all businesses. It can't be a one-size-fits-all solution for everything. But as a principle, it's brilliant. And again, I've made point to a couple of things to maybe read more on. Jim Swan, the English Whiskey Guild. But if you have a little dig about on regen agriculture, if it's the first time you've heard about it, check it out. It's common sense stuff. It's based in real sustainability and long-term business sense. Like having turbines. We have wind turbines on the farm. It's very windy on the farm. Mentioned that earlier. We've got 2 turbines generating electricity, and we're doing everything that we can as a business and where we are to look after the land. And the trouble we've got at the moment with finding Yorkshire peat is it kind of clashes with those values a bit. So we've got to find a way around that if we're going to do it. As it happens today, I was actually stood in a peat kiln earlier today, or yesterday for me actually. So the maltings that we work with, Muntons, very, very good maltings. They're big business. They provide malt to a lot of distilleries, a lot of big distillers. And they built a peat kiln in the last 4 years on top of the Yorkshire Wolds, so that they could provide some of their customers with peated malt. And yeah, I was having a look around that site earlier today. In fact, this hoodie, which I realised when I put it on, actually really smells pretty smoky, pretty peaty. And yeah, we're working with those guys. They've got a big sustainability focus as a business. They've been one of the top 1% sustainable businesses in the world. Lots of awards for sustainability programs. Brilliant work that they've done. And you never know. We might be able to crack it. We might be able to find a solution here where, you find some displaced peat somewhere, when you're doing kind of building infrastructure or something like that, and we can find a bit of Yorkshire peat and do it from scratch. And as you get to know us as a distillery and as an independent distillery, we've got very firm values. There's been lots of opportunity over the year for any distillery. You can just kind of make things a little bit easier for yourself and, sell that whiskey a little bit easier, but we wouldn't want to compromise those values. It just wouldn't fit for us. It wouldn't be right for us. So until we can get that sorted, we won't see any peated spirit running off our stills. That's a really key part of it. Until then, it'll be peated casks. But as you can hopefully tell when you're tasting this, that the results are good. and you can get like I say, like a lot of control in maturation with this cask type. So you get a really nice balance of kind of sweet smokiness about it. What do you guys think?
That's great. A lot of peat for just cask finish. So I have a question on the. Are you rotating any crops on the field, or it's always barley?
Yeah, absolutely. So we grow 2 types of barley every year. We'll grow a spring variety and a winter variety, which is quite good for kind of spreading your bets in terms of weather. So when we're harvesting, we'll tend to harvest the winter barley sooner than the spring. But as soon as we've harvested that barley, you're then on to the next crop in that field. So we'll cut the barley, of course, as you'd expect. It'll be combined. You're left with some stubble in the fields, so you leave that, and you kind of mulch that in. So you put rollers over it to kind of break it up a bit. We'll then drill the next crop. So by drilling, it's like it's a huge kind of I suppose if you looked at it visually, it would look like a plow, but you're not dragging and turning the soil over. You're just kind of drilling into the soil and dropping the seeds in for the next cover crop. And so we'll tend to grow next radishes, which have a longer root. So barley roots are quite short, whereas radishes roots are much longer. And so what you're trying to create in the soil is different root structure that's deeper. And so when they grow, and this is the next step, so then now you've got a cover crop in there. So then you let some livestock in, and they then mill around in that field. We've got sheep milling around in the fields now, so they then munch up all the cover crops. And then, if everything works well, you then drill it again and you drop your barley in this spring. And then that spring barley will then grow, and round you go again. And you keep going. And at some point you'll give that land a break. It's not my area of expertise. Tom, of course, is the guy for this kind of deep dive. And you'll want to give that field, some time off. But it's kind of, it's just simulating a more natural cycle. That's kind of what it's doing. And it's funny because I was asking Tom and Jenny about this. I was like, well, this makes complete sense to me. Why would it have ever been done any other way? And when I discovered this, I was really surprised. So in the UK, post World War II, we were still on rationing here into the 1950s. This is like, 5-6 years after the war has ended, we're still on rationing here. And so there was a massive effort to grow as much as you could, grow as much food as you can to feed the nation. And so, a lot of the kind of farming that we're familiar with from our generation is around maxing out, the growth potential and therefore the food potential. And of course, with that is the business potential with it as well. So, I think that's where it kind of settled in as the norm over a period of decades. That's just how we do it. Whereas actually, if you go back pre-war, you go back further, what we're doing with regen farming and direct drilling is kind of a step back before all of that approach. So cover cropping is really important. It's a really big part of that cycle. You can't just grow the same thing and keep doing it because it's bad for disease as just a kind of fundamental. And if any of you have any land that you like growing stuff on, you got a garden or allotments and that kind of thing, you'll know about this kind of stuff. You don't keep you do the same thing all the time in the same place, then you're going to have to find other systems to try and prevent the problems, because again, it's slightly kind of you're kind of inviting issues farming that way. So you then have other solutions to solve it, which again aren't exactly a natural process. So it creates other issues down the line. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. My great love in life is whiskey and booze, you know. And over 10 years of working with Tom, David, and all the people around the farming side of the business, and Kate and Alex running the brewery and everything, and learning about this kind of process, it's been a big learning curve for me, learning this stuff. It's fascinating, really is. Yeah, I encourage you guys have a little dig around, and if you've got any pals that have a farm, ask them. So, what do you think about regen? What do you think about regen farming? And see what they say. And if they go, "What are you talking about? Never heard of it," then you've started a conversation. You've probably done something good. Hopefully, they can have a little read about it. One last point on that, and I will shut up about it. Really good documentary. It was on Netflix, and it's Woody Harrelson. It's called Kiss the Ground. It's a good watch. You know, if this is just kind of just perch your ears up, you think that's kind of interesting, find that documentary and check it out. Yeah, and you'll see the kind of the impact of it, and yeah, it's a good watch, good insight. Anyway, I hope you like the whiskey.
I think your peated finish is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, thank you. Again, it's one that's done very well at awards. Was voted one of the weirdest emails I got last year. It was from a magazine in Switzerland called Whiskey Time magazine, and they'd nominated this as Whiskey of the Year in Switzerland. And yeah, we were amongst very good company in that final. There was 5 whiskies, and you'll like this, Sam, if you're listening. So there was 5 whiskies in here. There was some you'll know, of course. Lagavulin 16. There was Bamor 18-year-old. Yeah. There was a signatory bottling of Kalila, very heavily sherried Kalila. A bottle of Indri. Can't remember which Indri it was, but there was an Indri in there. And then there was us. It was a fascinating kind of little awards night and things there. It was actually quite funny. I'd arrived in Zurich and suddenly realised that, you know, we might need a tux for this thing. And yeah, you know, we had a lot of tastings and things to do. Thankfully, it wasn't a black tie event. Can't tell you how relieved we were when we found out it wasn't black tie. Because you don't want to have to hire a tux in Zurich. Or buy a tux in Zurich. Yeah, that's not going to look good on the old expense receipts. Yeah. Anyway, thankfully it wasn't black tie, but we're in this awards, and you know, it was one of those lovely reflection points because you kind of see actually what we've at this point back in 2025. You know, we're in our not even in our kind of 10th or 12th or 20th year of production, but we're in there punching against you know, some of the best known distilleries in the world. And you know, it was a real amazing thing. We didn't win it, sadly, but just, you know, getting this kind of profile and this recognition of where we are in kind of with 10 years production under our belt is really amazing. And yeah, I think what this whiskey does particularly well is it finds that nice sweet spot between, you know, we've all got the pals who love the heavily peated whiskey, yeah, and we've all got pals that can't stand it. Yeah, and what you've got here is a bottle where they can meet in the middle. And if you're trying to recruit people into peated whiskey, it's a good stepping stone in. If you're, you know, on the other side of that, and you know, you're trying to, you know, drink some whiskey with a friend who loves peated whiskey, but you're just not into Lafroig and the heavy stuff, and you've got something that's kind of nice, a bit lighter, a bit more delicate, and it's kind of sitting in that sweet spot. So yeah, I think we'll keep this going. We'll keep this release going definitely into the future because it's been such a hit. Delighted to hear that you guys like it.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of that. I'm also now staring at the PX cask, being a huge Sherry Bomb fan. So I'm kind of
okay.
It's lovely. It's lovely. I finished my peat, so I continued to the PX.
Yeah, good. Let's go. Let's crack on. I haven't tried this for a long time actually, so I was quite looking forward to it.
The nose is just fabulous.
Yeah, this is one of the perks of standing in for David, despite it being 4:25 in the morning here. Is getting to revisit some of these really lovely bottlings that we've done for the ImpEx team and for you guys over there in the US. So this was a single cask.
The first thing I notice on this is the heat, right? Just the ABV is much higher, right, than the whiskeys we've been tasting. So I noticed that, but after I sit with it for a little while and let my tongue get adjusted to the change in the ABV, I was going to add water, but I decided wait, and now I'm tasting it without water. It's really amazing, right? My tongue is finally adjusted to the ABV, but I suspect if I add water, it's just going to come up with different profiles and different flavors. So this one's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very, very nice cask. Yeah, of course, cask strength. You're talking about the heat there. It's punchy, you know, it's 59.4%. Cask number 685. This was laid down back in October 2017, and it was put into bottle in Feb 22. And yeah, this is a snapshot into some of the kind of very earlier sherry casks that we were filling. We never filled a lot of them, as I mentioned before. It's predominantly bourbon that we fill. So when we're releasing anything that's sherried or full-term sherry, it really is super rare from us. So it's nearly always a special release bottling, or in this case, a single cask standalone. So it's a real treat. Yeah, it's a real one-off. And yeah, nice to revisit it.
I heard that the Oloroso sherry you released in that same batch was also really amazing.
Yeah, it was again. You know, I mean, you know, it's almost like Sam and ImpEx know what they're doing, isn't it? It's almost like they're
almost
cask, isn't it?
This might be one of my favorite examples of a PX sherry, just because it's nutty and balanced and delicious, and not a lot of times with PX you get like jam and raisins, and it can get cloying. This is just so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cloying. That's the thing that PX can do sometimes. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
but man, it would have been cool to try that with the Oloroso next to it. And oh well.
Well, you know, next time, you know, Henrik, if we're back here in a year or whatever, you know, I'm sure we can work it out. If there's any left, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely. I mean, if you do have that little bit of Flagship left and you go between the two, this is a completely different end of the spectrum of a real kind of, you know, you're seeing a side of our whiskey and a side of our warehouse that very few people get to see. So yeah, it's a real lovely cask, is this. Yeah, we tend to only really do kind of, you know, two deliveries of sherry casks a year. Yeah, at the distillery. So, you know, it's with kind of full term maturation in them as well. Like this, you know, it's really ultra rare. Yeah, it isn't kind of easy to get hold of our whiskey in this kind of maturation style at all. Even here in the UK, of course, where we've been, you know, it's our strongest market. You know, it's where we sell the most whiskey, and you know, yeah, even fans of Filey Bay here very rarely get to get to try anything quite like this. If you've got any friends in the UK that know about us and like our whiskey, you should let them know, because you can wind them up and you can say that you've got something that they haven't.
I kind of get a little spice on the finish. Can't quite place it. I mean, almost like a strong pepper. Now, I'm very particular for pepper because I'm a wuss when it comes to spicy food, but it's really nice.
Yeah, it does have that. It does have that kind of spicy heat about it. It's just so different. It's just so different to everything else that we've tasted, and I think the higher ABV definitely makes it quite a step up. And yeah, that higher strength can take that getting used to. Has anybody tried it with water? Has anybody given it a go?
I added a little bit of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
It's definitely going to be able to stand up to it. That kind of ABV, and at this kind of age as well. Yeah, the water element is certainly good.
And it was funny going back to the Flagship and then this, because the proofs are so different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of, having the Flagship there so we can reference it. But I mean, like Tony said, it's kind of hard with the wildly different ABVs to really do a side-by-side comparison.
Yeah, it is. It's like Bob Dylan versus some kind of heavy metal, isn't it? They're both playing guitars.
Now, it'll be good.
From that point, it gets more and more different.
It'll be good comparing this one to the Virgin Cask, because you're almost at the identical proof.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we give it a go? Do you guys want to try it side by side?
I was gonna say I'm almost tempted to pour all the cask strength ones and have them side by side to just go back and forth. But yeah, let's do it. Let's do the Virgin.
Should we do it? I think that's a great idea, personally. If you guys have enough glassware and you're able to do it, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. If you got it, pour it.
Yeah. Okay.
Whiskey even came out for it. Vadim's Cat whiskey.
Yep.
So one of the other perks of a tasting like this is, because we're opening these bottles here, it means that our team gets to try them as well. So I'll be dropping these back into the distillery, and
I got to get one more glass.
We all obviously, as you would expect when bottling a single cask, you can't bottle it all. There is a kind of a point where you can't get that whiskey, all of it, every single drop of it, out into a bottle. It's just not physically possible, depending on your bottling equipment and whatnot. So that naturally creates a little bit of whiskey for people to taste, which is great. So we always make sure that wherever possible, everybody's trying to try everything at the distillery, especially anybody that's been with us a while, chatting to customers, tour guides. Amy, our ambassador, always really keen to try everything. I've just dropped that stopper. So yeah, they'll be pleased, very pleased that we're opening these this evening that I've got behind me. It means everyone gets to try them again.
So I did a quick run through of the three, and I feel like the PX maybe should have been the last one we tasted, as opposed to the third from last. I'm curious to know what other people think. It just to me, it's a bigger flavor. I feel like we should have worked our way up to it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to have to, clear my palate, everything, so I can really get a good taste of the subsequent ones here.
Yeah, sure. I think I'd definitely agree with you there on, if it was just kind of based purely. Sometimes lineups are interesting because you're kind of going, well, sometimes ABV and age and cast type. There's lots of reasons that you would finish on that PX. Absolutely, there's plenty of reasons why that would be good at the end of this lineup. But we wanted the Madeira at the end because this is the most recent example of our whiskey landing in the US, and it's something really unique as being part of course, the ImpEx collection of bottlings. And I think as a slightly kind of older expression, and being the kind of latest whiskey that we've dropped into the US market, it kind of felt right to put it at the end, even if it's not quite as intense as the PX.
I think Sam has said it beautifully in the past that we're experienced enough to be able to handle it. It's not a big deal. It'll be delicious either way.
Yeah, exactly. And
Spirit of Yorkshire is very, very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful county. We've got a lot of really beautiful landscapes. We've got the Yorkshire Dales, which is a national park. We've got the North Yorkshire Moors, which is a national park. We've got the Yorkshire Wolds, which is very soon to be declared as an area of outstanding natural beauty. We've got a lot of very, very beautiful countryside and some amazing coastline as well. So we're very, very fortunate. It's a very beautiful part of the British Isles. There's some areas that are less beautiful as well. We've got some big cities in Yorkshire. Leeds, suburbs of Leeds that you drive through and probably go, yeah, Yorkshire's quite mixed, in that respect. And the distillery and where we're located on the coast, because it's been such a tourist destination for so many centuries. I guess people always going on holiday to the coast. It is naturally a very very kind of classic coastal destination. So if any of you do make it over, then you want to pay us a visit, and you like a bit of nice scenery and nice countryside, then you won't be disappointed. There's plenty to see, plenty to do.
Is there like a train that we could take from London to you and then up to Edinburgh on our next trip up there, or do we need to make a special trip just to Yorkshire?
Yeah, so if you're doing London to Edinburgh, we're a really good stop in the middle.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so that's legit doable. Okay, I might not book a flight and just do a train.
Yeah, it's like train. It's a really great way to kind of, you get a much better feel for the place you're visiting if you can do it, if you've got the time. But London to York is 2 hours. From York to the distillery, about an hour. So you can do it via rail link as well. We've got one of the reasons that we put the distillery where it is that we've got a rail platform near the distillery. So you can get the train to see the distillery.
Are you using the rail for shipping product out, or is that not a thing anymore?
No, that's not a thing anymore. It wouldn't work for us exactly where we are. But there's distilleries in Scotland that will have had the rail link for them in terms of moving whiskey and raw materials would have been massively important, because it would have been the only way to get there with any kind of actual transport of without trying to drag tons of barley and casks and whatnot down very, very difficult roads. So the rail links for Lowlands and Speyside, you'll find distilleries that were still to this day located primarily for those transport links. But for us, we're moving everything by road. So just going to talk about the Virgin Oak for a little bit. So this was cask 3020. It was bottled in 2023. 60.1%. You know, when we're looking at potential casks to make the cut for single cask releases, you know, again, we're looking to the area of our maturing stocks that are certainly rarer, and this cask type is certainly, you know, one of our rarest. We have not filled a lot of virgin oak or new oak casks, and you know, you're seeing a really different profile. I think to date, this is the only new oak single cask that we've done. So to give you an idea of how rare that is, and you know, we're available across 16 different export markets now, and most export markets will get, you know, a couple of single casks a year, that kind of thing. So, you know, what you've got here is, again, it's super, super rare. It's worth just taking note of that.
This is virgin American oak?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so these were very, very, very nice casks, very expensive casks. And they were like a light toasting and a light char. And so they were very different to a new oak cask that you would use in terms of bourbon production, you know, or rye production, which, you know, are more heavily charred. So, you know, this lighter char, light toast, which is, you know, they would bring in obviously richness, and you get mouthfeel and body because you've got all that lovely structure in a whiskey like this, which is coming from that. A lot of it is wood, of course, as you'd expect. It's a new oak cask, but what you're not getting is that kind of really intense new oak. It's a more subtle cask, and the reason that we made those choices, and it won't surprise you after listening over the last kind of few drams, you know, that, you know, these choices were made to help maintain balance in the whiskey. And we took a delivery of these twice, but like I say, we've never really put them out into single casks at all. We've done a couple of special releases, which are kind of a marriage of this cask type over the years, and you know, they're a really useful component to have up your sleeve as a blender. You know, you need some, you know, you put in that nice batch of whiskey together and you want to just bring a little bit more body or a bit more richness. It's a nice to have a bit of this in your warehouse because it gives you, again, options. And that's something that is, you know, we're different in a lot of ways to other distilleries, but one area where I would like to say we're all on the same page is that every blender and every distillery wants options. Yeah, you don't just want one type of wood, or ideally not just one type of spirit. You know, the more options you've got in that warehouse, the more interesting kind of whiskies that you can release over time. And we've used one music analogy tonight, but you know, having different cask types and two distillate styles is like having more instruments if you're in a band. Yeah, you got one distillate style. It's like a guitarist and a drummer and a singer. Have two distillate styles. You just added a string section and a keyboard player. You know, put in, you know, different wood options, different maturation options, different sherry, different stages of fills. Some of the refill sherry casks that we've got in the future are absolutely stunning. And if you're back over, this is aimed at Sam specifically. If you're back over at any point, make sure that we try some of these when you're with us because they're really, really good. Yeah, so you know, those options again. You know, you're just building out that stage in which you can create different flavors and different profiles. And new oak is a really, really interesting one. But an interesting time, just to quickly drop in, that one of the main reasons we looked at these casks was for a third distillate that we've created, which has yet to be released, and is something that will be coming along in the near future. It won't be this year. Don't think we'd be able to fit it in amongst all the 10th anniversary stuff that we're doing. Wouldn't really be right to do it now, but in the early months of 2022, we did 3 months of rye production, which was rye that we'd grown and malted. And it yielded, we ended up with something around 100 casks of rye that we've got, which isn't a huge amount, but it's certainly enough to get a little bit over to the US, that's for sure. whenever we get it out of cask and into bottle. Not many people know that we've done this. We're happy to talk about it, and it's not like top secret or anything like that. But yeah, it's there in the wings for the future, and a good chunk of that rye spirit that we made went into these as well, to these casks.
And maybe hoping for the rye labeling drama to get settled out as well with Canada.
Yeah, wow, I mean, talk about something that's so overly complicated and difficult. Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? It'd be nice to just be able to put a definition on that bottle that everybody can understand, that's clear and straightforward. Yeah, maybe that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, we might be. If we make the decision to only release it when that's sorted out, we might never get released. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, well, I can tell you when we did it. Yeah, it was hard. It was a hard 3 months production. Was that? And we're not set up for rye production. Distilleries that make rye whiskey will have specific parts of equipment which are tailored to that kind of production. The trouble with rye is that it is thicker, so getting it through the mash tun, problem number one. And then everything that it touches, the coils in the stills, it's just got more solids. It's just much harder to work with. Everything. If you've ever heard that rye whiskey production in a malt whiskey distillery is difficult, then it is. I absolutely tell you 100% that is correct. And if you've ever heard that it's difficult, it is an understatement. It is very, very challenging. And our distiller Dom, who's been with us since 2017, and thankfully, Dom does a lot of the distilling for us, kind of week in, week out. Obviously, David's on the road a lot and out and about in different markets. I'm up in the warehouse a lot, and we obviously dovetail and overlap in our roles and in production and whatever. But yeah, Dom had a rough time distilling a lot of that rye, and was very happy on that final day's distilling when the last cask was filled, and we all thought to ourselves, I don't think we ever want to do this again, do we? But we'll see. The results, thankfully it's tasting really, really good. And the results have been really, really good. And over time, I think we'll forget how difficult it was, and then maybe think about doing it again. But I think for now, the memory of it is too raw, too much in living memory. Good. So we've explored the virgin oak a little bit. It was a really, really lovely cask. I think this had actually arrived in the US kind of quite recently as well. So it's kind of one of the more recent single casks that we've done for you guys out there.
And it did come in a new package. So Jordan was asking for a picture. So it looks like this. Really nice. Cool. And it shows the process that Joe explained with additional steel there and other stuff. But it's just looks a little bit premium to me. So the one that you see on the sales sheet, it's a basically generic tube that used to be used for single cask expressions. Now it's going to be this nice fancy kind of window.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, it's a nice upgrade. It's a nice upgrade, and we spent a lot of time on the bottle. It's a very, very, very nice bottle. And we've got the gannet on here, and we've got the wave pattern, and there's some really nice detail here in the tubes, completely hidden. And we kind of realised actually, an open front is much better for us. So yeah, if you're seeing anything in the new open front packaging, you're looking at definitely kind of more recent stuff. Yeah, really tasty, really different. From my opinion, we don't, like I say, we don't release this kind of stuff as single casks. It's really nice to try. It's been a while since I've tasted it.
I have complaints with Sam that everything he's picked has been just absolutely amazing, and it's hard to pick which one bottle I get. I feel like I'm going to get robbed today.
Yeah.
Vadim really hates Sam. It's obvious.
Sorry, Vadim. Sorry, guys. It's not me. It's Spirit of Yorkshire people. Just that's why we have Joe here. He's making too much of a good whiskey. So
if I'm a tall guy, it's fine. I'll take it. I'll take the
As we move on to the ImpEx collection bottling that we're tasting tonight, hopefully you still have a drop in your glass. I do want to invite everyone to turn on their camera for just a second. And we have a tradition we do here is we raise a glass. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Sam, thank you for making this possible. And thank you to all of you for being here tonight. I hope you had a great time. I really enjoyed it. Give Joe a second. There you go. All right, everyone, raise a glass and smile to the camera. Got it.
Great.
I got to get a new laptop. It's so delayed now, but thank you. This has been absolutely spectacular. Sam, thank you for making this possible, and thank you for picking these amazing casks. I mean, PX, Oloroso, Virgin Oak, and this is a Madeira that we're moving into. I could definitely taste the Madeira. This is the hardest thing at this tasting is picking just one bottle. That's a bad problem. Good luck to you all on the poll. I wish you all luck.
Sam, is it worth just sharing a little bit of info on the ImpEx collection and some of these casks and bottles that you guys are doing?
Sure. So we're lucky enough as an independent bottler to be able to get a hold of this casks from this amazing distilleries that we bring in to the United States for your enjoyment. So it's been a little bit of a push on my side with David Thompson. So David, gotta shake your library or whatever you call it or museum and get me some special casks. So let me go talk to Joe. So they sent a couple of samples as usually because we taste, not like we don't trust him, we just taste him because we feel that's something that needs to be done as a part of the process. And I tasted it with a few more people. At some point, I might invite some of you guys because we really feel like your palates are so discerning, and so you act like not all the professionals in this industry act like you. So we might ask your opinion on something. So that's how the process goes. It takes us about 2 weeks. Even if we're at the distillery and taste from the cask, we never commit before we come back because we consume too much whiskey while we're there. And we do it one more time and then one more time. And then I got a few people that I trust the palates, and we do blind tasting. And we thought that was a winner. That was a real winner. We thought the Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery works so well with Madeira. I mean, those series of sherry casks that we brought in, it was Fino and then PX and Oloroso and PX were phenomenal. But we felt like this Madeira really balanced with the DNA of the spirit itself. And we thought being there 6 years at that time, I think it was one of the oldest releases, I believe, was right enough. We didn't want it to be more than 6 years there. So here we go. The rest is in your good hands. And I'll be very curious to see what you guys think of.
Yeah, let's hear it, guys. What do you think to the ImpEx collection Madeira cask?
So I cleared my palate and I tasted the Madeira again, and I'm just like, yeah, now I understand why you waited till the end, right? Like I just needed to clear my palate. And then Sam, you're giving away your secrets, right? You're telling us how it is that you always pick such amazing winners. you drink a lot at first and you winnow it down, and then you go back again and you winnow it down further, and then you go back another time and you winnow it down. That's how you pick great winners. That's why every time you're here, everybody's
No,
super.
okay. I appreciate that. And, we did pick up some good casts in the past, but, it takes one mediocre cast to bottle everything that you've done before goes. Joe probably would prove me on this one as well. It's just
Yeah.
people forget about all the good casts. They would remember that cast for the rest of your life.
You're only
be
as
very
good as
careful.
your last cask, right?
Sorry, Henry.
You're only as good as your last whatever it is. In this case,
Bingo. Or as bad as the last cast. So we're very careful, very selective, but we're very proud of this cast. Like, I think we hit it.
Yeah, it's good. It's very, very nice. And yeah, Sam, I totally agree. Our spirit in Madeira is really awesome. And like many of the kind of more rarer casks that we've got, I just wish that we had more. Wish that we'd laid more down when we got these opportunities to get them. I don't think you'll ever hear a distiller, blender, anyone in my position say, I wish we filled less Madeira casks, or I wish we filled less sherry casks. You're never going to hear it. So yeah, we're going to be committing more to this spirit, this style down the line, because it's so good. We've had such good results, and this is such a lovely example of it. Yeah, really, really special.
Joe, I know that you're the one in the room that probably don't like us because of this 48% unlimited releases. I know you have to stop. Like, you were dreaming about 750 mil and 700 mil. Now everything is 700 mil. And here Sam comes and has some weird thing to do. So I was expecting this cast to be a little bit not as good as it was. So thank you for being a gentleman and generous and not being vindictive.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, man, we're not going to, got to make sure you guys have got good stuff to, champion us in that collection. And we're very selective with independent bottlers. We've never had the approach of selling whiskey in bulk, to bottlers. It's just not how we do things. And it's really nice to have an ImpEx collection example from our side. We can put this alongside a few others that we've done. We were the first English whiskey bottled by Berry Brothers and Rudd. We were the first English whiskey bottled by Adelphi, of course, indie bottler with the Arden American connection. And we're very fortunate that any independent bottlers we work with are really good friends. So and you look after your friends at the end of the day. That's right.
Now, not a lot of independent bottlers were able to get your juice, so that's something that makes us even more proud. So thank you for that.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure, and really nice to have it in the glass. Yeah,
so
good.
Joe, I have a question about the Madeira cask. What's the base spirit in that? Is it basically a cask strength or almost cask strength flagship, or does this go through the Solera? It doesn't make sense that it's going through Solera because it's relatively.
Yeah, sure. So the flagship side of stuff is standalone. It's a standalone process for that whiskey. So across the whiskies we've tasted tonight, that's the only whiskey that's using that process. Everything else that we're tasting is either a marriage of casks to create a batch, which is then bottled, and then when it's gone, it's gone. So the STR and the Peated Finish that you guys are tasting tonight, eventually, you won't be able to buy those. They'll be gone. There'll be a version available, probably a little bit older, be slightly different, but it's going to, eventually that batch disappears over time. Whereas with the single casks, of course, as you'd expect, because it's an individual cask, we're not looking at kind of re-racking Flagship as such to create those, because it would be kind of messing with that system. So if we're doing re-racking, it'll be going straight from a batch of bourbon casks, combining them together, sometimes reducing the strength and then going into the next cask. Yeah, but when we've got something like this, it's completely standalone, one cask on its own, heavier of our two distillate styles, and yeah, it's one of the reasons why they're so special, is that just standalone uniqueness, because from start to finish on that cask, it's its own thing.
I was going to add this particular expression is part of our edition 5, which is going to be launched about April or maybe March. But so your club is basically the first club in the US that has a chance to taste it. I did have one tasting where I was asked to feature it. So the Whiskey Shop in San Francisco brought a few cases, and they have a few bottles left. If you're interested, I think they're around 25% off on the independent bottles. So I'm going to put the link if you don't mind, and if that's the only place where you can buy it. But I'm very proud that you're the ones who got to taste it first.
Thank you. Yes, please put the link in the chat.
Do you guys get the lovely stoned fruit from this whiskey? Kind of like apricot, nectarine, that kind of thing. It's really beautiful. Really, really nice. Anybody got any questions? I've talked a lot tonight over the last 2 hours. I've probably gone off in directions, might have.
I think an obvious question would be, for your 10-year anniversary, do you have any cask that was laid down? You're going to release a 10-year-old? And then the second question I had was, you had PX, you had Oloroso. Is there Fino as well?
There was. It's gone.
Yeah, it's a good question. So yeah, every year that we've been making whiskey, of course, you don't want to just raid that year's production and bottle it all, because that would be crazy. Despite it being crazy, I think there's some distilleries that have treaded a little bit close to that line, and we've tried to make sure that, certainly the 2016 stocks, 2017 stocks, 2018 stocks don't really want to be touching any of the casks from those years unless it's for something really special. And of course, 10th anniversary is absolutely an occasion where we would reach into those 2016 stocks and get some of that in a bottle and release it. So yeah, we're planning throughout the year, we're going to be doing an anniversary bottling. So our first casks turn 10 years old in June. So we'll do a kind of wider release of an anniversary bottling in June, and then be a few other kind of nice bits throughout the year, distillery exclusive and whatnot that talks about it. Got a few really good customers, really good retail partners here in the UK that we'll be doing some stuff with. Maybe a whiskey with a number on it, a 10 on it, later towards the end of the year. The 2016 production was half a year's production, and the first casks went down in June, and Tom and David were doing 2 distillations a week, and we had Jim on site for a lot of that, and I joined in November 2016, and we went to 4 distillations a week. So once we get into the back end of this year, we've got more options in the 2016 stocks between November and December. And yeah, it'd be nice to get something out then. Kind of small bit of 10-year-old standalone 10-year-old whiskey. Have to see how that plan comes together as the year unfolds. But yeah, it's really important, because if we want to have a 20-year-old Yorkshire whiskey in a bottle one day, or a 30-year-old Yorkshire whiskey in a bottle one day, maintaining these early years production and the stocks is really important. Yeah, so it's super precious whiskey. You can't go back in time and recreate it. So yeah, you become very aware of that in a job like mine, just how important these decisions are. It's very easy to go as a young distiller. You go, oh well, the demand's there. Let's just bottle that. You can only sell it once. Sell it. But actually, in the future, it's kind of safeguarding that longer term process. There was a second question there. Forgive me, I've not answered it. What was the question?
It was the pheno, but people say, yeah, you had that, and I found it a place. So
have you? Good, you've tracked some down. Excellent. Yes, we have it indeed laid down some pheno casks, and there is a little bit of that out in the wilds. Yes, so yeah, check it out. A bit like the Madeira that we're tasting, because it's on that lighter end of the sherry spectrum. It works really well for us. Yeah, you'll have to, again, Sam, this is another mental note here. Next time you're with us, we're going to hit some refill sherry, and we're going to hit some pheno when you're next over, definitely.
Single cask was the first cask ever that we brought in to the US from you guys. I was surprised how dark it was, but it was not as intense as Oloroso, or as not dry as Oloroso, not as intense as PX. It was really, really good cask. Henrik, you think you were able to find it? Grab a bottle. That's a really good bottle.
I find a place that has 2 bottles left online. So
fantastic.
That means they're both gone.
They're not anymore.
Just to say, we're not going to see the link in the chat. Yeah.
Right.
You are correct.
I'm looking forward to seeing a picture of you posting it in the group. Do it.
Yeah. And you can invite us over to your place for a sip.
Oh, totally.
I
mean, whiskey is made to be shared. Let's be honest. So.
You won't have any problems sharing it with you because it's not a peated whiskey. So.
I got to tell you, Joe, I just went back and killed the sample for the Flagship. Boy, that is so good.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, when you go back?
And it's nice because you can feel the bones of it through the rest of the line.
Yeah.
Each one has its own little personality, but I think I'm a fan of the Flagship.
Yeah. If you just want that baseline, best example of the distillery character, it is absolutely the choice, definitely. Yeah. And like I said at the start, the good thing about it, Jane, is you can always get a bottle of that. These lovely little Phenos and PX and Madeira casks, they're going to be gone. There'll be a day where you can't buy them, but yeah, the Flagship, you'll always be able to grab a bottle. Yeah.
Definitely on my list.
Good.
By the way, when I bought the PX from Mission, they had mislabeled as Pheno, and so I thought we were getting the Pheno, which I'm not mad at it. I loved the PX, so it was a very pleasant surprise. I did end up. So when you go on their website, it'll be like the URL says Pheno, but the description says PX because I sent them an email and said, "Hey, you guys have it mislabeled." We figured it out, but just FYI. We all voted for our favorite of the night. Joe, do you want to take a guess of what the group's favorite tonight was?
Oh man, yeah, okay, I'll have a go. I'll play the game. Yeah, so I think the favorite tonight could well be the Peated Finish.
Wow, that's a good guess. All right. The results are in. I'm sharing them now. 0 votes for the Peated Finish.
Well, look at that.
Between PX and the ImpEx collection, what is it? The 6-year-old, the Madeira cask.
I would have voted for the Peated Finish had I been able to vote.
Oh, you couldn't vote because you're also host. Sorry.
So I couldn't vote tonight. I'm like,
okay.
Oh, I can't vote for the peated one. Damn it.
I mean, that's what Joe. I said, Vadim. I wanted to buy a second vote.
Right. That's the thing. Joe needs to understand about this group that it might have been just about 80% of the voters' second choice.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you have the cask strengths next to the, the 46, 48%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just because it didn't get any votes doesn't mean it wasn't very dearly loved. I mean, the fact that Henrik,
to me, it's, I mean, so I'm, as the group know, I'm a peat head, and I don't think this is not a peat head's peated whiskey. To me, the peat was very, it was dusty. That's the only way I can kind of describe it. And then it had a lot of lemony flavor. I mean, it was good. Don't get me wrong. It was the first. I finished my sample. Don't get me wrong. But I thought the PX was just so, I don't know, much more complex, so much more complete. So that's the one I voted for today. And I, kind of like as I think a lot of other people said on the PX can very easily be very sweet. And this one was sweet, but it was not overly sweet. It was very well balanced. To me at least. So yeah. I mean, we are talking margins, kind of like,
And I love the Madeira, and I went back to the PX after we tried all of them, and it still held up, and it was just so punchy.
Yeah, it's a good cask. Yeah, it's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult to pick a favorite out of that lot.
I went back to both. I went back to the Flagship, the STR, and the PX. They all hold up so well. And the fact that we are tasting these cask strength ones, and then I go back to the lower ones, and they still hold up. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, this is a great lineup. This is a crazy great lineup. But I wouldn't expect anything less from Sam, really.
Thanks, Kate. I appreciate that. Jeff, you were not able to enjoy it with us tonight because you didn't have the samples. There's a question to Mr. Perlovsky. But send me your address and I'll send you some samples that we tasted tonight.
Oh, that's so nice. I'm back on the STR myself just now after going back to the Flagship. I'm just like blown away at how good all of these are. And I loved them when we did this last year, 2 years ago. I've lost track. Vadim and I I don't remember.
June 27th.
It's 2 years ago because I remember that.
We split it with the other distillery.
Right.
It was June 27th, 2024. It was Lochley and Filey Bay together. It
was 2 years. Okay.
Oh, Lochley. Okay, yeah.
Which, Sam, we need to do a Lochley tasting.
That was our introduction for both distilleries. And I haven't been out shopping a lot, so I see what's out there, and getting to taste them through this group gives me a chance to try something where I've heard of it, I might buy it off the shelf, but having tried it, I'm definitely going to buy it off the shelf. So, but
yeah, that's why you guys are doing good work with this group, and that's matters to us. More opportunity for people to taste the whiskey we're making is something we're always really, really welcome of, and always happy to support and attend, because it's how we do it. As a young distillery, it's always challenging when you're against bigger, more established distilleries. But also as an English whiskey as well, it's an extra kind of challenge for us sometimes, for people to take that leap of faith and buy that bottle. But once people try it, they get it in their glass and they get it on their palate. That's where the real important work is done. So yeah, thank you for having us, and thank you for putting this lineup together and all attending. And it's been really, really great.
Dawn for us.
What's that, Jane? Sorry.
Thanks for getting up at the crack of dawn to hang out with us.
I've actually really, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I don't think Joe went to sleep. I don't know. The dawn is not even anywhere close to it. He's just still partying, right, Joe?
Yeah. There hasn't been much sleep, I'll be honest. Yeah.
Joe, have you actually been drinking, or have you just been pouring stuff and pretending to drink?
Just micro dramming.
All right.
You know, nothing crazy, Kate. You know, so I've got to try and get some stuff done this Friday. But yeah,
I was gonna say.
absolutely whiskey in these glasses. I've opened these bottles here tonight.
Wonderful.
You know, this isn't. I'm not sat here with tea in
Look
these.
at a cup and tip it all into the cup.
I've got my partner will be getting up for work in about an hour, so I'll leave these out for her. She can maybe have a little nose and taste before she gets off to her day of work.
That's a nice little gift. Very
thoughtful. It's nearly the weekend. It's Friday, you know.
It's over the yardarm somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
Any plans to visit us in the US this year?
Yeah, you know, we've got I think we've got an invite from Sam for a few things that are coming up, and you know, it'll typically be David or Jenny heading out to do those visits. I'm sure I'll be out there one day at some point. Couldn't say exactly what's coming up, but yeah, you know, if the invite's there and you know we can make it, then yeah, we're always keen to be out there. Yeah,
we'd love to roll out the proverbial red carpet for you here. And I know most of the members are in LA. I know we have some that are not in LA. So wherever you are, Sam, let me know how we can support you. We got you.
Vadim, your group, you've been great, guys. All I can say. Like,
thank you.
I feel I have so many personal friends that really support, and that encourages me not to disappoint you. So we're going to try to continue bringing some good gems.
Wonderful. Yeah, we have a year of ImpEx this year, right? We have a series happening. So this is the first of our series for 2026. So we're really excited.
We are too. We are too. And, you know, people like Joe, he's in the production. I think that's pretty neat and rare, where you talk to the person who actually puts that soul and touches those steels with his own hands. It's just incredible. I mean, our brand ambassadors are great, but having someone from production team, the guy who runs the whole operation is just. And I hope, Joe, you don't mind me inviting these guys when they're in England or close to visit the distillery and the brewery.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, you guys are always welcome, and yeah, I do mean this. If you are over in the UK and you can work out that journey, make sure you give us an email. You know, just grab the contact on the website. Say, hey, I was on the virtual tasting. We're coming to visit. Let me know, because if I'm there, or if David's there, we'll make sure that we roll a couple of nice extra little drams out for you guys. And you know, we're always really happy to do that, because you know we appreciate it. You know, it's a fair distance for you guys to travel, so we'll want to make sure that it's a great visit when you get to us. So yeah, please reach out if you're coming. Definitely get in touch.
And how far are you from Edinburgh, did you say?
So if you were going to drive from Edinburgh to the distillery, you'd be looking at about a 4-hour drive, something like that. If you were going to do the train, you might be somewhere similar on the trains, because the route's a little bit slower from north to south. So I don't know, 3.5 hours by train, maybe something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm doing a British Isles cruise this summer, and then I forced my wife to join me at the Edinburgh Military Tattoo. It's been a dream of mine since I was a wee boy to go there. So I've already bought my tickets. You know, we're on row 6, so but we have to get back to London, of course, to catch a plane. So it's kind of and I'm learning really quick that during that time, Edinburgh hotels, how should we say, they're not cheap. Far from it. So you know, maybe have to do a stop on the way back to London.
Yeah, great.
Before our flight. So it's definitely an option.
Good. Yeah, well, explore York as a stop there, because it's the halfway point. And you know you can do that run from York to the distillery and back. Or there's plenty of nice places to stay on the coast as well. But yeah, they would be kind of good options to look at, definitely.
Yeah.
The spectacular show, the tattoo. I was there 2010, and I feel jealous. You're gonna enjoy it, especially sixth row. Everything's gonna be basically on your palm. Yeah.
I as soon as tickets opened up, I bought tickets. I'm just kind of nope. I'm doing this, and it's something I've always wanted to do. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Joe, what are you most excited about that we should be looking out for? Have you already told us? Was I not paying attention before we let you go? So you have 10-year coming out at the end of the year. Anything else? Any kind of fun experiments that you've worked on that you can't wait to bottle that you can't tell us about? Anyway.
Yeah, we've done some really amazing barrel aging projects. Flipping beer into casks. So there's some really nice stuff coming through, which is we're emptying casks for Flagship and other releases, of course. And rather than refilling those casks with spirit or whiskey, we're taking them to the brewery, filling them with different beers, barrel aging some really nice beers in these casks, getting the beer out, and then getting whiskey back in. So some of this stuff is so crazy unique to us because it's really tying together the brewery and the distillery in those casks. And we've got a nice little batch coming through this year. Another one to put on the list, Sam, when you're next with us, because these are rare and beautiful, so unique because to have the beer maturing in these casks that's being made from barley that we're also growing, it's a standalone thing, and I would challenge anyone, even the greatest of the whiskey experts, writers, or just simple kind of really passionate people about it, to try and find another distillery that can do it in the way that we do it. Because unless you've got a farm, a brewery, and a distillery, making this kind of barrel-aged beer and whiskey program would be impossible. So,
and I hope you're leaving some of each product aside to do them side by side. Some barrel-aged beer, and then
yeah. So these some of the funnest tastings that we've done are exactly that. Going through the kind of vertical tasting, or what we would call a vertical tasting, of going, okay, here's Flagship, of course, at the start, as you'd expect, and then trying the beer before it's been barrel aged, the beers after they've been barrel aged, and then the whiskey that's been in those casks, and kind of the way you're seeing the relationship and how the flavors change, of course, with all of that. So that's some exciting stuff there, definitely.
So if we visit you, that's the kind of experience we might get.
Yeah, we don't have that on as a kind of standalone kind of event or product unless we're focused on those kinds of releases during that time. Because unfortunately, of course, like any of the limited things we do, they come and they go. And so if you're visiting us at a time when they've come and they're with us, then you'll be tasting that beer and experiencing that process. But of course, there's more time where we don't have that whiskey on shelf than when we do. So most of the time, you can always taste the barrel aged beers. You can always find a dram of the barrel aged beer aged whiskies that we've released at the distillery. But in terms of a standalone tasting, it's normally when we've actually just released them.
Yeah, that would be an amazing, I don't know, tour or whatever you want to call it. Tasting experience.
It's really
schedule that. Wow, that give people a heads up. Hey, this is going to happen next week.
You gotta add just a little bit of that malted barley to go along with it, just to start from grain all the way.
Why not? Yeah, why not?
You have access to it. You grew it all, so
we've got a lot of it. Yeah, we're holding quite a lot on the farm of malt. Yeah,
could make a porridge out of it, and then That'll be the palate cleanser between tasters or something. It'd be very interesting. Yeah.
We've used it in some bread. You know, we've got a coffee shop on site, nice kind of, simple kind of nice high quality food offering at the distillery. And yeah, we've integrated some malt into some bread and stuff there over the years. So yeah, it's definitely one to revisit. I quite like that actually. If we did kick off that tasting specifically with that, that'd be really cool. Yeah, nice idea.
Yeah, delicious. Yeah. I'm hungry and thirsty all at the same time right now.
Well, you know, there's few things better than a cold beer after a whiskey tasting, in my experience.
And a warm hunk of barley bread.
Even better.
Awesome.
I just realized that out of all ImpEx portfolio, you're the only one that has brewery and the distillery.
Yeah.
Of everything that and growing barley. That's unique.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. Very lucky to be in it. Very privileged position as a whiskey maker in this situation. Yeah.
Well, look, everything we've tasted has been amazing. And thank you for spending the evening with us. We really appreciate you sharing your experience and this amazing liquid. Keep up the great work, and we look forward to celebrating more of your successes and buying more bottles and adding them to our collection and sharing it with our friends. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, guys. Absolute pleasure. Hopefully see you guys at some point again soon. It might be on another virtual in the future, but yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of the drams, and thanks again to everybody. Yeah, it's been brilliant. Thank you.
Joe, thank you. And the Virtual Tasting Society, thank you all forever. I don't know if Jeff heard me or not. Vadim, would you connect us? I want to send you some samples. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Thank you all. Love you all. Take care. Bye.
Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye.